Okay, we're good to go.
Good evening. Welcome to all gathered in the council chambers and those watching from home. This work session of Poquoson City Council is called to order to discuss our fiscal year 2026 pre-budget hearing. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our city manager, Mr. Randy Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you know, later this evening, we will have our annual pre-budget work session. What we thought we would do this evening, for your benefit, for a reminder for most of you, but also for the public, before we begin talking about the FY26 budget, to remind you how the FY25 budget is constructed. So we will walk you through the general fund, both revenues and expense. We'll walk you through the adopted school budget. You'll see how that works as a component of our budget. And then we're available to answer questions with regard to it. Again, to create a foundation for a later discussion of the 26th budget. With that, I'll turn it over to Tara, who's did all of the work on this presentation.
To kind of remind you of when we develop the budget each year, we have guiding principles that we use. We try to maintain the tax rate. If you remember in 25, we weren't quite able to do that. We did have to raise taxes, but we do make our best effort to do that. We also focus on existing services, so we try to take what we have today and maintain those and work to keep everything the same. We also have financial guidelines that we maintain, all of the good things that the city has built over the years, the AAA bond rating, fund balance thresholds, those things. We try to adhere to those in the budget process. We work to limit new initiatives. Sometimes there are new initiatives. Last year, in FY24, we had additional public safety positions added. So there are times where we need to add additional things, but we do try to limit those. And then we also, we base the budget on what we have available at the time that it's budget presentation time. So like when we talk about the school's budget, they base theirs on the governor's budget because the General Assembly hadn't done their work, which does ultimately impact us as well. So like Randy said, we're going to get into where we were in the adopted budget for FY25. So this slide really shows you a breakdown of the general fund revenue as adopted, and then the percentage of each of the revenue items. Obviously, our general property taxes are our largest revenue source. And we're going to get into some of these revenue sources in the next few slides. All right, so starting with our big one, the general property tax. That is 73.2% of the general fund revenue, and you see how it's broken down. Real estate, and we have so majority of that 23.37 is really current. There's about $100,000 of delinquent budget. The Treasurer's Office does a really excellent job of collecting the tax every year. They usually around 99% of what's assessed that they collect, but there is a little bit that's left delinquent, and then Steve Clark and company work to really collect that over the next year. So that's where we get some of the penalties, interest, and added fees as well. And we'll get into real estate tax a little bit more on the next slide as well. The Public Service Corporation tax is the state corporation commission's assessment on the value of real estate and personal property of all public service corporations, such as Dominion Energy, Virginia Natural Gas, Verizon, and others. So the Commissioner of Revenue certifies the levy by the state. Personal property values, they spiked in 2022, if you remember, and due to supply chain issues, inflation, and when we developed the FY25 budget, we really started seeing those values kind of renormalize. So they were starting to make their way to more normal values. So we did have some decline, if you will, in some of the values, but then we had some growth projected as well. And again, there's some delinquent in there, but that's about 40,000 of that. All right, so real estate tax. I wanted to take a closer look at this since this is our largest revenue source. And so in talking about FY25, have some growth, obviously, from the new developments. In this budget, Bull Run was still going. That finished about the end of '24, so we had projected those homes coming online in '25. Also, Legacy and Quarter Creek, still under construction today. And then there was the 3-cent tax increase, which was the $622,000 there. And a big portion of what we're seeing is tax relief. So in this budget, we budgeted $1.1 million. But what we're finding is this program, particularly on the disabled veterans, the elderly is the program that the commissioner runs, the tax relief and deferral program. And that's not growing quite as rapidly as the disabled veterans. And that is over. So we budgeted for disabled veterans the 870. And as of December, that is at $1.2 million.
How accurate was your growth projection numbers? Is that pretty much on? Or?
It is pretty much on. When I looked at the December assessment from the treasurer's office, we're pretty close. It's a little lower, primarily because of disabled veteran, the credit that's happening there. But I do anticipate some more supplements coming online in the spring as homes are finishing. So I think we're doing okay.
Question, do you track where you have overlap between the tax relief and deferral for the elderly and disabled veterans? Do you track where there's overlap there, and which category do they go to?
I just get kind of raw numbers of those. I don't have it in, like I don't get the information of knowing this home is disabled veteran versus another. So I get that information from the commissioner's office. And I don't know specifically which address.
Understood. Okay.
But that is something that we're kind of watching because it is growing very rapidly. And just so you kind of have an understanding of when we did the budget, when we budgeted the 1.1, that was 5.3 cents of the real estate tax. And so now we're pushing closer to 6 cents on the tax. And we're still kind of evaluating how to estimate that for next year of how much that's going to grow.
I would note that I heard Tanya say the other day that when she began with the city, which was not that long ago, that last line before the total line was about $75,000. And you just heard Tara say it's exceeding 1 million at this point. It is the fastest growing element of our budget.
State tax during FY25, it was not a reassessment year. So you'll find when we start doing the FY26 budget, that is a reassessment year. So we will have some reassessment work there as well. So kind of the next largest source of revenue is state revenue, which is 11.3% of the general fund revenue. Most of that coming from personal property tax relief at $1.9 million, which was capped at 2006, so that's what we get. So as we add more vehicles online, that number doesn't change, it then becomes the allocation amongst more vehicles. The DMV reimbursement is for part of salaries and benefits for staff, and then again with the state share salaries and fringes, that's for the treasurer and commissioner's office. The Children's Services Act covers the state percentage for foster kids and school children of those services. And if you recall, at the end of '24, we picked up a number of foster kids, and we still have those kids. So those expenses relative to the revenue are still growing. So we're still evaluating kind of where we're going to be at the end of this year. But we may have to bring back an additional appropriation for that as well. So if we get more kids, we'll get more state revenue to offset that. It's not enough. The city does have to pick up a portion of that, but we would get additional state revenue. There's state grants. So when we do the budget, we usually budget for the emergency management grants. And in this budget, it was the third year of a 3-year SRO grant. So the ones that we know and can really predict at the budget time, we include. And then during the year, if we get additional grants, we bring those to you. Library aid is state library funding for books, materials, subscriptions, internet service, equipment. The library director kind of allocates how to spend that money and gets approval from the state of how to use those funds. The state 599 funds are assistance to local governments with police departments. Street and highway maintenance are funds from VDOT to cover, in the general fund, it covers salaries and some maintenance expenses. There's also $900,000 in capital projects fund for paving. So you'll see it's in both places for those items.
Hold on a second. We have folks from the Commissioner's Office actually listening in, and they sent in the answer to your question. There is no overlap between the disabled veterans and the elderly number.
Okay, thank
Person
you.
might participate in both, but there is no double count. Thank you, Regina.
Into other local taxes, which is about 10% of the general fund revenue. It's indeed that, but the locally generated items. So sales and meals tax makes up the majority of this, as you can see. So the state returns 1% of the sales tax collected within Poquoson to the city. We also benefit from online orders. So if you remember during COVID and everyone was shopping online and having Amazon delivered, we do benefit from that. So we're still, I still see a lot of Amazon trucks in my house and other houses, so that certainly does help
Is it
us.
still hot?
Mm-hmm.
I remember the manager talking about that back in 2000.
Which line item is that under?
Sales tax, the first one,
Okay,
the
thank you.
$1.2 million sales tax. And so far this year, the sales tax is coming in strong, so that's looking good so far this year.
It wasn't long ago that Virginia did not charge that sales tax on online stuff, and so fortunately, that they changed that law when we really, right before we really needed it as a community.
The communication sales and use tax is a retail communication and video service tax, which is 5%, applies to both residential and commercial customers. Because there's kind of a reduced landline in residential homes, you see more cell phones versus landlines, that has been increasing over the years. So expect that to potentially continue to do that. Meals tax is budgeted at just over $1 million for 25, and collections are strong so far this year. We had some new restaurants come on, and they seem to be doing very well, so our collections are coming in strong. Liquidation tax is when home sale, we get revenue from that, and that's been coming in good with all of the development going on. So the remaining 5% of the budget are these other revenues, kind of how I classified them. So permits and licenses are primarily building-related permits, which have increased over the years because of our development. So that's been good. Fines and fees are primarily court fines. This year, that's been a little bit lower than last year. Haven't quite figured out that story yet, but it's slightly under last year. The use of money and property includes interest. It includes other things, but the primary thing, we have some salaries on there as well, but most of it's interest on deposits. And that has been coming in very strong, and you probably know from reviewing financial reports over the last couple of years, that's been coming in really strong. We've had the ARPA money invested, so we have been putting the interest earnings in the general fund. And so when we got the money, it was sitting until the projects really got underway. So now that we're spending more of that money, that it's starting to go down slightly because of that pocket of money. It's still coming in good. It's just that extra money that we had is kind of going away.
But we'll continue to drop as we spend the balance of the ARPA money, the public safety building being the largest piece. So we see interest rate revenues going down in the budget in the foreseeable future.
Charges for services include passport processing fees at the library, which has been a great program, very strong program. Also included here are EMS fees and Parks and Rec, their programs, events, and pool revenues. And the EMS fees are coming in slightly lower this year. Parks and Rec, some of that's coming in a little bit lower. I know Parks and Rec director thought, so we'll see how this spring or this. Miscellaneous revenue includes donations and opioid abatement funds. So, we budgeted $10,000 for library donations this year because they tend to be pretty consistently getting at least $10,000. We may have to bring additional donations as they get their Friends of the Library donation at the end of the year. But other donations we get, usually smaller amounts for fire, police, we will bring those to you during the year to appropriate those donations. The federal revenue there is a portion of the emergency management grant, which is our 50% match for the fire department to use. And then if there's any additional federal revenue grants, we will bring those to you during the year. General fund transfer of $350,000 is transfers from the sewer and solid waste fund. And what that's really for is the administration of those funds. So it really covers those.
Could I add one thing? Compared to some of our neighbors, you'll see that $7,500 in ongoing base level federal money is pretty low. And there are lots of reasons for that. There are lots of reasons we don't qualify for things, and some of those reasons are happy stories. But to say that we do this pretty much without any federal support is only off by $7,500.
That's revenue. So we'll move on to expenses. So this gives you kind of the functions, if you will, of how our expenditure budget is broken down for the $38 million and gives you the percentage of each. The big drivers in the department budgets on the next few slides. So, education, that's the biggest expenditure function of the general fund. And the operating transfer to the schools, which is $12,268,000, which represents 31.9% of general fund expenditures. In addition to that, we have a transfer from the general fund to the debt service fund to cover the school debt that we have outstanding. So those two things combined equals 40% of the general fund expenditures going to the schools. In addition to the 40% from the general fund, we also have $3 million in the capital projects fund, which is really coming from the debt we're issuing for their high school replacement this year. So we have additional spending. So the general fund plus the capital projects fund spending, you have $18.5 million of school spending in FY25 budget. When we take a look at the schools budget, we wanted to kind of give you a perspective of kind of their budget, high level. Their adopted budget is the $30.5 million. And just to give you a little bit of information, the schools base their budget on the governor's budget. So when we talk about it, the governor puts out a budget in December, and the General Assembly convenes and they do their work, and hopefully they decide on a budget. Last year it was May. Past it's been June, it's been September. Hopefully they get it done. If the schools have enough time to revise their budget, they will. Last year we had to press on before the General Assembly finished in May. So they use, again, same thing we do, the best information they have available at the time. The state funding formula is based on the local composite index, or what's called LCI, which is the way the state measures the ability for a locality to pay for education. And then in addition to that, The state also uses an average daily membership. So the schools use 2,038 to develop the FY25 budget. So based on that, their $30.5 million was broken down by 55% from the state, 40% is from local, which the majority of that is the city's contribution. And then they have the remaining 4.44%, which is primarily from federal grants.
Correct. The percentages that you have there for the operating budget and do not reflect the debt transfer for school debt nor the CIP projects that are related to schools.
That's correct. So the $30.5 million would include our $12,000 operating transfer. Excuse me. Yes, $12 million. $12 million transfer from the operating budget. All right. So another large part of the expenditure budget is things that we don't have a whole lot of control of. So we have outside agencies, shared services, and regional entities. So when we start the budget process in November each year, we send an application with information on how outside agencies that we've had in the past, how they can submit a budget request to our office for review and consideration. So that's where that process kind of starts. Occasionally we'll have additional agencies reach out and ask, well, how do I enter the process? And we put them on our list, and they might request funding as well. And then with shared services, the city has agreements with York County for court, sheriff, E911, social services, things that we don't have in our department, so we share services with them. And we receive the budget estimate from York to cover the operational and maintenance costs related to these shared services. So if York adds staffing or they add additional costs, if you remember, we had a true-up at the end of last year because they had bonuses. So they will come. We don't have a whole lot of control over those, and we pay our percentage, which is about 15% of those costs. We also have a number of regional entities that we're a part of, and we receive budget requests for our portions of those costs, and then we have to pay that portion.
I would note for you that the shared services, particularly the courts, the sheriff, and the Commonwealth's attorney are actually, the formula for that is based in a court-approved document, which we were successful in getting updated not that long ago, but the math there is prescribed by the court shared services agreement. 911 and social services are a different agreement, but essentially we get a good deal in 911, and we pay our proportionate share for social services.
So city personnel is also a large part of the budget. There's 147.85 full-time equivalent positions authorized in the general fund, which makes up the 15.1 million. And just to give you some perspective, I mean, personnel expenditures are about 39% of the whole budget, but if you reduce the shared services, the outside entities, the regional entities, education and transfers out, the departmental spending that's left over, personnel expenditures make up 79% of that. So it's a large portion of the budget. Benefits are also included in that personnel cost. And one big part of that is the retirement system that we contribute to. And those rates are approved every 2 years by VRS. And so 25, there was a rate increase, so that rate will not increase for 26. So.
Rate increase as in how much we have to pay into it.
So that's kind of a quick recap of 25. So we thought we'd take a minute to kind of set the stage of where we're kind of at as we start the 26 budget development process. So the economy is still kind of a challenging environment with high costs, inflation still there. We do have the 26 as a reassessment year, so the assessor's been working really hard on that process. Like I just said, the VRS rate is the same for 26, so that won't change, so that's some good news there. Health insurance, I'm a little concerned about that. We have some high claims this year. I'm aware of several of those. I have reached out to, we are part of the state local choice program, and I've reached out to them. They have not given me our renewal estimate yet, but we expect to get that mid-February. That should come in. But just to give you some perspective, when the schools presented their update last week, they're using a 24% increase. They are not on local choice, but they are issuing an RFP to see if they can bring that rate down. So I think in the market, it might be kind of hot. The shared services, we don't have those estimates yet. We also have the public safety adopted pay plan that we have to address in the budget since that's already adopted. We do have additional operating costs coming online for the new public safety building. And then schools, they are currently conducting a compensation study. And at their meeting last week, to fully implement their pay plan is $1.6 million. And then additionally, they indicated that their current ADN, they use 2,038 students in the FY25 budget development, and they said they're holding at that number. So I'm not sure if they're going to have additional students coming online next year. These are just some upcoming budget dates. So tonight, a pre-budget public hearing was advertised for the public to come and speak. April 14th is when we anticipate the recommended budget coming out. April 28th would be a budget work session, public hearing, tax rate hearing, and then May would be the scheduled budget adoption.
I would note too that at the 28th spot, typically we do a joint session with the school board as well. We've done that all but one of the years that I've been here, so I would anticipate we would also do it that evening as well to hear directly from the school board and the superintendent on both their budget and their thoughts on the manager's budget. We're here to answer any questions that you may have about the 25 budget so that you've got a strong foundation or a reminder on what that is as we approach the next budget. And so this evening, as Sarah said, is the pre-budget public hearing. It affords an opportunity for anyone that would like to provide input, constructive suggestion, constructive criticism on the budget process before we begin it in earnest.
Back on this page, and it talks about the $12 million general fund. This is for the school spending costs. I'm just trying to get a figure for the numbers. 40%, is that 18.5 or 12 and the 3, not including the debt service?
It's the 12 million and the 3.1 million is the 40%.
Okay. It's, I was kind of lost it when you went to the next.
We're trying to show what was actually coming out of the general fund, and that's the 40%.
I have a question. So the negative numbers in the real estate tax column, is that negative from what was, that's not negative from what was budgeted? That was taken into consideration during the 25, but the actuals are still slightly a little bit more negative than what was projected, is that right? And will that be able to make, you said that some of the other revenues are coming in stronger, will that end up just leveling out across the board? Thank you. And what happens if it doesn't?
I feel good about it.
Well, okay, all right. Thank you.
Oh, but let's
But
explore your question. If it doesn't, and the total general fund revenues pull negative, then we'll be looking to the expenditure side of the budget to make sure we reserve enough expenditure capacity so that our bottom line stays in the black. And that should really not be a problem for us. But theoretically, That is one of the principal reasons we have a fiscal stability reserve. So we've got several layers of protection, but as you know, Tara and her team, a very small team at this point, are reviewing this stuff every month. So when we see things happening that may be taking us in the wrong direction, we begin to take action to always keep that in the black. And at least during my time here, we haven't had to come back to council. We've always been able to handle it at our level rather than coming back and making a more pronounced choice. But that's one of the reasons, one of the principal reasons we do that monthly revenue and expense update and projections. Because it's easier to take care of it halfway through the year than it is the last week of the year, for sure. So we think we're okay. And if we didn't think that, you would absolutely know. We'd be screaming it from the top of the highest hill.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do, okay. The new budget showed it increased operating costs for the new public safety building, okay? And in the past budgets, we've had the operating costs for the old municipal building and the police station, okay? Now, as the new public safety building comes online, we still, for at least for a certain period of time, we'll still have the operating costs of the old city hall, okay? And the police station. Are there plans to get rid of those operating costs?
We are, at this
We
moment.
haven't
don't-
discussed that, you know.
At this moment, we don't have a short-term plan for the replacement of the municipal building, which, as you know, also houses Parks and Recreation and the senior center programming in the back. So that's not as easily taken care of. We are still working on a plan for the police building. I'm anticipating the possibility of receiving a proposal from a community-based organization for either the reuse of that building or the reuse of that site. If either is received, it'll be for council for consideration. The problem that we have with the building, that particular building, the police building, is it's not ADA accessible. It certainly has some age on it, so it limits some of the things that we could do in there. But we are absolutely continuing to work on that and hope to have a plan that we can present to you in the next couple of months for that.
I remember in the past, we've talked about different problems associated with each building, especially the old City Hall building, because that got flooded in Isabel and with concrete blocks and water got in there and that kind of thing. So I didn't know, those are costs that we still have to, in situations we still have to address.
We do. We're not there yet, but
I'm sorry I tossed that out cold. I just thought of it when I saw that and I didn't know the
you're
answer.
absolutely right.
Any other questions? I do have some. Tara, if you could back up, please, to the slide that showed the school system's ADM, please.
This one?
Exactly. You also commented earlier about the LCI, or Local Composite Index. I think it'd be important for the public to get some idea of what that means, especially how we compare to other localities around the state.
So,
Ask the superintendent. Mr. Mayor, I would note to you and to council, the superintendent of schools is here by invitation. Those questions might be best first addressed to him if he's prepared to come and speak to it.
Thank you, Mr. Tillett.
Go to the podium or right here? Okay. Well, thank you for having me. Our LCI, and I didn't come prepared with the number in front of me, I think it's 1.6. Yeah, 1.65 sounds right to me, but our LCI has dropped actually a bit, which is good for us since I've been here. But that is a formula that's generated for all 133 school divisions to analyze the local community's ability to help support schools. And as you saw in a slide, that about 40% a little over 40% of our $30 million budget actually comes wholly from local support. Significant. Without local support, obviously, we would have to close the doors. Secondly, we get a very small percentage of federal money. Randy spoke to that from the city side. Same is true for the schools. Comparatively around the region, we get significantly less money from federal through title money than most of our neighboring school divisions, or than all of our neighbors. So as we start calculating our budget, the ADM is the driving force for how the state money comes through average daily membership. And as Tara said, we have budgeted flat at 2,038 last 2 years. We are still hopeful that at the end of this school year, we're going to see the predicted influx of students from the legacy development primarily that has been projected from the Weldon Cooper group that you all are very familiar with. The state demographers have projected 350 students roughly over the next 4 years from local development. And actually, we're one of only 6 school divisions in the Commonwealth projected to grow with ADM moving forward over the next several years, which I was very surprised by. But that is something we're excited about. We just haven't seen it yet. Our ADM in December was right at 2039, I think. So we're right on it. When the kids come, it's like the movie, if you build it, they will come. When the kids arrive at intervals during the year, we get to then analyze that increase, and it generates additional revenue from the state based on that additional average day. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Tiller, thank you very much. If I remember correctly, and please help me with this, each student equates to about $7,000 of state tax revenue.
That sounds correct. Yep, it's very close to that number.
So do the math. That's how important it is that we attract young families with school-age students to this community. Yes.
Every time I see an expecting family in the city, I always thank you. I'll say thank you, and that keeps me in business.
Yes. And our LCI, would you characterize that as among the top in the state?
It's the opposite. In the LCI lower number actually gives us more state funding, and so the amount that another way to look at it is the burden to the local is high. We have the cost to you at 40% of our budget is significant. I'll leave it at that, which we greatly appreciate. As I collaborate with colleagues around the state, I always say that I know everybody feels this way about their funding partner, but there's not a group, an elected body in the Commonwealth who's more committed to education than this group, and I don't say that lightly. I know that when you start looking at the numbers and the magnitude of the overall budget that the schools benefit from is significant, and we very much appreciate it.
Well, and thankful to be in a position to do that, but that 40% then would be among the highest.
I don't know comparatively, Tara, do you know? You've probably looked at this more recently than I have. In comparing other school divisions, I know that it's comparable, if not of the highest.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us. And if I remember correctly from my school board days, it's been many years ago, but the percentage of state revenue is significantly lower now than it was then. Wasn't it up around 65% or so at one time?
It may have been. The funding formula for the state, without getting in the weeds here, is very complicated and convoluted. And I'm not speaking just from me. The JLARC study you all may be very familiar with that has been presented to the General Assembly over the last several years has some significant challenges mentioned in there for how this funding formula works, especially for small rural school divisions, putting the burden back on the city to offset the significant costs. Basically, it funds positions to the school based on what they call a standards of quality formula, which only fund a little over half of our current employees. So in order to a pay raise that we'll all be talking about in the next few weeks and months, in order to offer that pay raise, the state will pay only a portion of that, the SOQ teachers, and the remaining balance of those staff members would have to be paid locally. So it puts the burden, again, back on local government to find the money to offset this cost. And that's the real challenge now. There's some language in the General Assembly being floated around as we speak to try to get closer to that recommendation from JLARC to change that funding formula some. They instituted some support caps years ago during the 10-11 school year, I believe, during the recession, that caps some of the funding from the state, and there's some bills being floated in Richmond as we speak that address reducing some of that support cap. All of those things could help us with additional revenue from the state side.
Very good. Thank you for sharing your expertise, Mr. Tillett.
Thank you.
So just in layman's terms, just to reinforce, as the percentage of state revenue decreases, then the local revenue must increase to offset the difference. There's no way around that.
That's absolutely correct. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question of
Yes,
Mr. Tillett?
yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And I apologize if you said this and I missed it. The lowering of the LCI, do you have a feel for the dollar equivalent of that drop, or is that purely dependent on the governor's budget that comes out?
The two things. One, this is a biennium budget, so we're actually operating on the second year of an already approved budget that was revised again, as you know, in May when we received the final budget this past year. But the governor has recommended some edits to that budget, and the General Assembly are taking up those currently. In that budget for us, it equates to a flat budget from last year, with the exception of the 3% pay increase that's in the governor's budget for FY26. And that equates for us to the state's portion of that to just under $300,000. So it's a flat budget from FY25 to FY26, with the exception of the proposed or the approved 3% that is still in the governor's budget for FY26. Did that answer your question?
So the LCI drop would equate
What
to...
already happened 2 years ago. The LCI drop is not for FY26.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you,
yeah.
thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't clarify that. It dropped since I've been here slightly, and that did increase our state revenue slightly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Tillett, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if I could share some thoughts that I shared to the public during our strategic planning retreat that we had on January 4th. My vision is to pass a budget this year that will help reinforce the indefinite viability and sustainability of the independent city of Poquoson from a strategic perspective. Beyond that is tactical. And based on my observations over the years and working closely with staff on the city side as well as the school side, we could well be at a tipping point when it comes to compensation for our city employees and compensation for our school employees. And I know of no greater investment that we can make on both sides is to invest in our employees. We are either at or near the bottom of the pay scale in this region, and it's understood that we don't have the means to be at the top, but I think we can be more competitive than we are. I think it's imperative that we are more competitive than we are. And rather than comparing ourselves to other places that we cannot match, my recommendation is to compare ourselves from where we are, where we've been, to where we can become. Let's compare ourselves to ourselves and the improvements that we can make. But I would appreciate if council members would put a lot of thought, a lot of contemplation into what we can do for compensation increases this year on the city side and on the school side. And we have a mutualistic relationship. The health and well-being of the school system depends upon the health and well-being of the city, and vice versa. We're that closely intertwined in this community. The schools being the foundation of the city, we exist as a city so we could maintain and operate our own school system. And we cannot let that decline. So please be mindful of that as we're providing guidance to staff as they're developing the fiscal year 2026 budget. And look forward to working with our colleagues on the school side and on the school board side as we do this. And Tara, I'd just like to thank you very much for an outstanding presentation, very informative and very well delivered. So your contributions are significant. And just another quick comment that reinforces the exceptional aspects of this city. When a city staff member is sitting at home after working all day, watching a council work session, and here's a question from a council member asked, and she stops what she's doing and makes a phone call and provides the answer to the question. That's pretty impressive. So Regina, can't thank you enough. You're a wonderful asset to this community. I'm very thankful to have you along with the rest of our staff members. So that just underscores the importance of doing all that we can to take care of our employees that take such great care of us. And Mr. Manager, thank you as well for a great presentation along with all of our staff members for this work session. And with that, if there's nothing else, then we will conclude the work session and move right into our council meeting. and those watching from home. This meeting of Poquoson City Council is called to order. And before we move on to item B on the agenda, at the last meeting 2 weeks ago was the first meeting of the year, first meeting of a new council, and it was my first meeting in my new role as mayor, which I'm grateful for, by the way. But there were several people that I needed to recognize and thank for all that they've done for this city and for me personally. So I saved 2 other people to recognize and thank tonight. So before we get too deep into the agenda, I would like to do that. And Councilman Kerry Freeman, I'd like to thank you for your contributions and your leadership over the years. Councilman Freeman has served on council for 22 years. 14 of those years he served as vice mayor. And for all those that attended or watched from home, former Vice Mayor Freeman nominated our new Vice Mayor, Debbie Bunting, for her new role as Vice Mayor. So I wanted to take this time to thank our former Vice Mayor, and Councilman Freeman, you will always be Vice Mayor Freeman to me. But thank you for your service to council, to the community, for your 22 years on council and your 6 years on the school board prior to that. So thank you very much. And also like to recognize and thank Councilman Bud Southall. Councilman Southall is our second most senior, second only to Vice Mayor Freeman in his service. I think Councilman Southall is in his 15th year on council. So do the math between those 2 fine gentlemen. There are many decades of public service. So thank you each for your leadership over the decades. And I think that you have both earned the title, and I consider it a high compliment to describe you both as senior statesmen, so to speak. So,
Senior is correct.
well, with emphasis on the statesman's part. So y'all's presence means a lot, and y'all's head nods mean a lot as we're doing business as well. So thank you, Councilman Freeman. Thank you, Councilman Southall. So, with that being said, I'd like to call on Vice Mayor Bunting to have our invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, as we enter into this meeting tonight, we enter into your gates with praise and thanksgiving for all the blessings that you have afforded us. I humbly ask that you grant us guidance and wisdom as we deliberate the business of the city this evening. I pray that you will keep us ever mindful of the people that we serve, that we will listen to them, we will listen to their voice as they call us. Let us know their concerns, dear Lord, I pray. And we ask all these things in your name as we humbly serve the citizens of Poquoson. Amen.
For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Debbie. Item C on the agenda, we have 2 special presentations. The first being we have Mr. Kyle Laux from Davenport and Company. Kyle, welcome back. You've been a great friend to this city and the council over the years. Davenport and Company is the city's financial advisor, has served the city for a lot longer than I've been on council. It's a Davenport and Company, with Kyle in particular, is another example of the redundancy that we have in the financial management of this city. We do not make decisions in a vacuum. We have an outstanding financial staff. Director of Finance, Ms. Tara Woodruff, demonstrated her expertise again tonight. And we have Kyle that works with us from Davenport, of course, as well as the third-party audits that we undergo every year. Kyle's going to present to us tonight a plan we have for financing for the Poquoson High School HVAC replacement. So with that, Kyle, the floor is yours.
Sir, Mr. Mayor, make sure this thing's on. Sounds like it's on. Happy New Year. Nice to see you all. And Mayor Hucks, nice to see you in that seat, and obviously lots of familiar faces. We've appreciated, obviously, the partnership over the years. So again, Kyle Laux with Davenport. To my left is Austin Sachs, a relatively newer member of our team, but a number of years in. So Austin's going to kind of do the back part of the presentation, and I'll do the front. And then David Rose obviously sends his best. You all remember David as well. So our team's always appreciated the partnership with your city, and you are a very, very well-run city. So we're going to talk a little bit of why we say that. We don't take that lightly. And then Austin will give you some specifics on the back side of the presentation. And certainly jump in where anybody has any questions as we go. But again, as the city's outside financial advisors, so this time of year, you're obviously naturally going through your budget and planning process. That's an important part of your sort of financial cycle. What we have tonight is a specific project, as the mayor said, in terms of the HVAC, but it's not a new project, it's not a surprise. And so one of the things the city's done a very good job of historically is really methodical year-over-year planning. And we'll talk about what the rating agencies have said, not even Davenport, but what the rating agencies have said. And that very methodical, very meticulous planning year-over-year with you as a council, certainly with your manager and senior staff, has served you well as a city for a while now. So last time we were here in earnest in terms of financing was 2023 for fire trucks. You've kind of taken a year off, which is good. You've got very good cash flow and you're able to do that. But again, the project tonight is $3 million for this high school HVAC system. For what it's worth, as we work with many of your neighbors and peers, there's a lot of this work going on. A lot of school building that was done probably 15, 20 years ago, maybe longer, and those systems come end of life. We're not engineers, but we're certainly seeing a lot of that in these couple years. So what we'll do in this presentation, just give you a little bit of an overview first of the city's overall finances. I think that's important before you go embark on a decision like this. Make sure we set that table, and then Austin will give you some of the specifics about the project itself. So a couple goals and objectives. First up there, talk about compliance with your financial policies. Those financial policies you've had in place with the city for a very long time. You follow them, you're in compliance with them. As we talk about the rating agencies here in the next couple of pages, they care a lot about your ability to continue complying with those. And so you've done a very good job there. Talk about the city's existing debt profile. You're in very good shape there. Talk about making sure we meet those best practices and the policy guidelines certainly already kind of mentioned. At the end here, really we'll talk about a time schedule for moving forward with the specific financing to basically take about 45 days, 60 days, something like that. And Austin will walk you through that. So page number 3, again, is just a little bit of background. This is a very important and B, very, very impressive page for the city of Poquoson. So you are a smaller city, you know that, roughly, we're about 12,000 people in population. And what we're showing here is our credit ratings. So we have 2 credit ratings, one from Moody's, one from Standard & Poor's. We shorten that to S&P for short. Moody's left-hand column, S&P in the right-hand column. And what we're showing with little colors here is that over the last roughly 15 years or thereabouts, where you started with the credit ratings, that's in the yellow circles there. You see those are A range ratings. They're strong, which for a city of your size at the time in 2010 was excellent, very good. You were A1 from Moody's, straight A from S&P. And as you take your eye up that scale, up being better and stronger, what you've been able to do since that time period, Moody's specifically, is 2 upgrades. You've been to a AA3, which is using the rating agency's term, a very strong credit rating, and then further up to a AA2. And on the right-hand side with Standard & Poor's, you've been from an A to a AA+ to a AAA, which is the highest possible credit rating that any local government, regardless of your size, can have. And so for a city of your, again, relative scale, to have achieved that much in the last 15 or so years is really A, very impressive, B, a credit to this council, prior councils, councils before that, and certainly the manager and the finance staff are excellent and top-notch, and that is amplified there in those credit ratings. These are important for a variety of reasons. A, they feel good, but B, they save money. So when we're talking about going out and borrowing for needed capital projects, this is what those lenders are looking at. Similar to our credit score and personal finance, if you've gotten a home mortgage or a car loan, something like that, the better your credit score, the lower your interest rate. Same concept here. The higher we can get those credit ratings, the more cost effective it is to go out and borrow for these capital projects when you as a city and a council decide you need to do so. So we wanted to maybe take a couple moments there, but certainly kudos to you as a city. This is a very impressive track record over the last 15 years. So the next couple pages, I won't read these word for word, but just give you a sense of what the rating agencies say. These are public reports, what matters to them. You can see the four major factors there: credit strength in terms of your wealth levels and reserves, conservative management in financial policies, always in place, and then credit challenges, which really there's not very many of them. Again, we're a little bit smaller, and so you do a very good job working with what you have in terms of that underlying tax base. The bottom sort of third, maybe two-thirds way down the page, they talk about factors that could lead to an upgrade. Again, this is with Moody's, and so they talk about material tax-based growth, which you've had over the last several years, and also significant increase in reserves and liquidity, which you've also had over the last several years. So as we think about this particular credit rating, one of your two, you're very well positioned relative to your current rating, and in fairness, could have some positive upward momentum relative to this credit rating if and when we need to re-engage with Moody's. Standard & Poor's, the second of our two credit ratings. Again, they use very specific terms when they cite this out of their public report here. So I'll just go quickly down the right-hand side of the page. They talk about a very strong economy. That's something that isn't necessarily maybe within your day-to-day control, but you've benefited by the virtue of economic development and being in a dynamic region. Second bullet point there, they talk about very strong management, so that is something very much within your day-to-day control. And they measure that by saying, do you have financial policies? Do you follow your financial policies? Do you do multi-year planning? Do you follow that multi-year planning? All of those kind of things you've done as a city year over year over year. Then the rest of those, I won't read word for word aside. I will pause in the middle there a little bit in terms of very strong liquidity. Your reserves and fund balance are very, very important, arguably the most important of any of the financial measurements that a rating agency or even an outside lender like a bank is going to go look at. Probably the first thing that any analyst goes and looks at is what is our fund balance and what is that fund balance relative to the size of our budget. Yours is A, in compliance with your policy, and B, well above your policy. And so that gives those lenders and those rating agencies a lot of comfort in terms of your financial strength. So just a couple more pages on background, then I'll turn it over to Austin. But basically, last 5 years of financial results, very simply stated out of your audits. The gold line there is your revenues, and the green bars, two different colors green, but those are your expenditures. And what you see is a trend whereby your revenues are growing on average about 6+% a year. Your expenditures have been growing about 4+% a year. And so it's led to some very nice, healthy surpluses. If you wanted to think of the city like a business, you are having very nice bottom line results. That again has further underscored the financial performance, further underscored your ability to go take care of capital projects in a very responsible way. And so we just want to make sure we pointed that out. One more slide here, and then I'll turn it over to Austin. This is the fund balance. You have a policy as a city that unassigned fund balance should be no less than 12 to 15% of your general fund budget. What this graph is showing is the red line is 12%, the yellowish line is 15%. So we want those green bars to be at least at that level and really above that level to be in really good shape. And given the strong results you've had the last 5 years, you've been able to grow that to a very healthy level. And so that's important for rating agencies, but it's also important when you think about where interest rates are. That fund balance by virtue of your ability to reinvest that, spins off interest earnings. Those interest earnings go right back into the general fund and help you as a city, help you as a council be able to take care of all the needs that you have, which we know are, they're numerous in terms of operating as efficiently as possible. So there really is a cost savings to having a very nice fund balance. Again, those earnings and those investment returns go right back to you as a taxpayer, as a council, and so we just wanted to point that out. Last page I'll do, I promise. I'll turn it over to Austin, but your existing debt profile, so as we think about this planning, to the credit of your staff, again, this is not a surprise. This has been very well planned and thought through. This is our tax-supported debt profile, meaning the portion that is paid for basically by the general funds, really schools and city projects. A couple observations we'll have. This is all fixed rate. We've been watching to see if there's any refinancing opportunities. There's not right now, but only because the interest rates on your loans are so low. We're able to do a lot of that refinancing during the all-time lows of the last couple of years. But if you look at the shape of this debt profile, see if there we go. So we are about to enter this fiscal year right here, which is 2026, and so you really have, kind of fast forwarding to the end of FY25, you get FY26, 27, and 28, about 3 years, and then you've got a very nice decline out here. And so again, very methodical, very much on purpose, allows you to be thinking about this capital project that Austin will talk about, to Tanya's credit in terms of the planning with Tara, basically all taken care of within the budget, and really capacity to be thinking out in the future for future projects. So you're in a very good position to be thinking about, again, that multi-year planning, taking on new projects. So with that, I'll turn it over to Austin. He'll walk you through a couple pages, a little time schedule, and then we can answer any questions.
Thank you, Kyle. Welcome, Austin.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. And so I'll jump in here, carry the rest of the presentation, specifically talking about the plan of finance for this borrowing. We'll be undertaking what we call a direct bank loan approach. And so what that really means is we're going to competitively solicit proposals from local, regional, national banking institutions. We'll get those competitively bid proposals back in. We'll analyze them, get to go back and forth with banks on terms and conditions, sort anything out, and then bring that back to you all for y'all to review and make a decision. In terms of the process, we'll touch on time schedule, but like Kyle said, about 45, 60 days, so thinking in around middle of March if we're end of January right now. A key point is there's no commitment, no obligation, no cost to move forward, so we get all this information, analyze it, and bring it back to you all to be the ultimate decision makers. Just a couple more points on the direct bank loan approach. I think I've touched on full terms and conditions, and the nice part about this is that you'll be able to lock in those rates, so once y'all, we'll be bringing proposals that are fixed in terms of interest rates, so you all know what you're locking in at that point in time, reducing any extra market interest rate risk. And then last couple points, in terms of prepayment terms, typically much more flexible than the public credit markets, being able to take advantage of that, and you'll be able to potentially refinance loans in the future or restructure if that opportunity presents itself. The city's used this direct bank loan approach many times successfully in the past, most recently in 2023 with the ladder truck financing. In terms of the interest rate environment, we've got two graphs on this page. The left-hand graph is showing long-term tax-exempt interest rates dating back to 1980. So you can see back in 1980 when savings accounts were paying 14, 15%. That's where interest rates were. We've gone downhill since then. Interest rates effectively bottomed out near 0% during COVID. They've come up a little bit, but most importantly, tax-exempt interest rates are historically favorable. So on that right-hand side, you can see in and around the range of 4% for long-term tax-exempt fixed-rate borrowing. Now we're just going to go through a couple pages of some budgeting estimates for this financing. So for our assumptions, we used a not-to-exceed size of $3 million. So start with $3 million. Similar to asking for a mortgage, you can ask for up to an amount, and it's easier to move downward rather than ask for more. In terms of interest rate, we used a planning rate of 5%. If we bid it today, we think be somewhere in the low to mid fours, but 5% conservatively, and a repayment term of 20 years for a long-lived asset like HVAC. Using those assumptions, so on the graph on the right here, in the dark green bars, you're going to have your existing debt service, so principal and interest payments that you saw in a couple pages prior. And then in the light green bar are the estimated principal and interest payments of the new loan, using the assumptions on the previous page. And so as Kyle was saying, we've got a couple years of budgets to work through before we reach that debt cliff, but due to proactive and strategic planning from city staff, they've done a good job of setting aside reserves so that there's not a real budgetary impact as we work through these couple of years of higher debt service payments before we hit that debt cliff. Using those assumptions, we're looking at, for rounding, about a $235,000 principal and interest payment annually. Looking at the financial policies, the city has two debt-related financial policies. Those are debt service versus expenditures. So that's on the left-hand side. So how many pennies out of each dollar in the budget is going to make a debt service payment? You can see we've got a policy not to exceed 10%, so 10 pennies of every dollar in the budget. Right now we're right around 8%, and once we hit that debt cliff, dropping into the 5% range. So really good shape in that with that policy. On the right-hand side is going to be debt to assessed value, so looking at the principal outstanding relative to the tax base, knowing that real estate revenues are a large driver. It's really one of our main revenue sources, and so we have a not-to-exceed policy at 3%. Layering in this potential borrowing, we're right around 1.7%, so plenty of flexibility and very good shape relative to that policy. Lastly, a preliminary time schedule. So we're here presenting this evening, strictly educational, informational, no action necessary. And with that, we send out the direct bank loan RFP, if agreeable with y'all, and get those responses back in 2 to 3 weeks from now, and then really look to come back and present results to y'all on Monday, February 24th. And at that point, we would have the responses from the banks. We would have analyzed them, give you all a sense of what the interest rates are and our recommendation, and look for y'all to take action as well as hold the public hearing. And with that, work through with bond counsel, city staff to work towards closing, where funds would be available in and around the early to middle part of March. So with that, I think that's all we had prepared tonight. Happy to take any questions that y'all have. If not,
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
On page 4, it talks about the credit strengths and challenges. And among the challenges, it says, for us, okay, that the tax basis that we have now is smaller than similarly rated cities. The tax burden is slightly higher than similarly rated cities. Now, as we add this $3 million debt, okay, which increases the tax burden even higher, how will that affect our ratings?
Very good point for question, Ms. South. I think 2 ways to think about this. Number one, so this report was actually from 2018, which is the last time Moody's did a write-up on us. And so, in fairness, that was a number of years ago. But I think when you think about the amount of growth you've had in your tax base over that time period, and very limited, if any, borrowing that we've done since then, I think if you really go look at those numbers, and we got like a refresh report from Moody's, which we'll probably do in the near term, I think some of that commentary would probably even change because you've grown so much and that tax base has grown so much. And your debt burden over that time period really hasn't grown much at all. So I think the first part to your answer is the commentary here. It's the most recent report that Moody's did, but I think when you factor in all the growth you've had, you're even in a stronger position than they're talking about right here. And the second part is just owing to, I think, what you're able to do with your resources. Again, as a city of roughly 12,000 people, plus or minus, You are on the smaller side for someone as highly rated as you are. And so you're really batting, sort of punching way above your weight, which is the other reason they say that, because you are operating on such a high level in so many other areas, that if you really went and looked at the other similarly rated cities, they're probably much larger than you are. And so you're really punching above your weight in terms of the credit rating itself, which is a good thing.
Well, I noticed that it says factors that could lead to an upgrade are material tax-based growth, which we tend to have, okay? And significant increase in reserves and liquidity, and we have increased our reserves, okay? But I didn't know how that weighed as compared to the challenges of adding debt for a facility our size.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Maybe if I could borrow real quick from Austin, the other way to look at this is when they're measuring your tax burden and your debt burden, really, they're looking at some of these same policies we have. And so, as Austin was talking about, we've got this debt service to expenditures and debt to assessed value. If we went and looked at these 4, 5, 6 years ago, both of these would look, they were good at the time, but they look better now. And so in the way that they measure the debt burden and the things they talk about, you look stronger today than you did when Moody's wrote that report.
That was my real question. Do we look stronger or weaker based on increasing the tax debt?
You look stronger.
Any other questions for Kyle or Austin? Kyle and Austin, outstanding presentation. And just for the public, as well as council who may not know, Kyle and Austin traveled down here from Richmond after hours to be here with us. It speaks to their dedication and what great friends they have been to us. So Kyle, Austin, thank you so much for doing that. And while y'all are here, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the significance of our AAA bond rating. That's not common knowledge that the average person would be aware of. If I didn't do what I do in public service, I would have no idea. But I understand that the AAA bond rating for a city this size, especially one that's a bedroom community that relies mostly on real estate tax revenue, to have that kind of a bond rating is somewhere between rare and unique. And it pays great dividends, literally, when we go out for bid, when we approach the lending agencies, when we finance things such as this new HVAC system. And we're in a position now that lending institutions actually compete for our business, which results in a lower interest rate that we have to pay, and all citizens and taxpayers in this community benefit from that tremendously. So again, thank you so much for all that y'all have done over the years to help us get there. And to provide a little bit of context, the initial rating was in 2010, I believe. Well, that coincides with the new city manager we got in 2009. That fine gentleman is sitting right here next to me. Thankfully, we just renewed his contract for another 2 years. So that underscores the significant impact that our city manager, Mr. Randy Wheeler, has had on the city as well as the individuals. And then we have other fine financial experts like our current Director of Finance, Sarah Woodruff, who's also a certified public accountant. Again, to speak to the redundancy that we have, our past Director of Finance, who is our current Assistant City Manager, Tanya O'Connell, is also a certified public accountant. And it also speaks not only to making ends meet and making the books balance, but it speaks to the efficiency that this city is operated. We're very lean. There's just no waste. And it's reassuring to me as a citizen and taxpayer as well how deftly this tax revenue is managed and administered. So just wanted to speak to that so those watching from home, the general public, can have faith in their local government and in the city staff that we're so thankful for. So all that being said, any other questions or comments from council. And one last thing for me, I spoke earlier during the work session on this pre-budget hearing, the importance and the burden on us to maintain the financial standing that we have. So everything we do, all the decisions that we make from a financial aspect must ensure that we maintain this position. And to Councilman Southall's point, even continue our upward growth from where we are now. Because we still have a little bit of growth room on the Moody side. On the Standards and Poor, we're as high as we can go, but we certainly want to maintain and even grow from where we are. So again, Kyle, Austin, thank you so much for being here. Hope you all have a safe
Appreciate it,
trip
Mr.
home.
Mayor. And I'll make one other point too, to the point of you've got the single best management team in the state, and on top of that, one of the most stable. And so we work with lots of different places and many of your neighbors and peers, but the skill of your managers, meaning manager, Mr. Wheeler, along with Tanya and Tara, but also the stability. And so we've seen a lot of turnover in the last 5 or 10 years, and the stability that your city has had, I think, has also really paid dividends in terms of being able to continue with plans and that multi-year planning that you just see all the results right there. So we'll say that one more thing, and we'll leave you to your night, and we appreciate it.
Thank you again, Austin. And just to reinforce Kyle's final comments about stability and continuity, I mean, I paid homage earlier in this meeting to our senior members of council, senior staff members, and the impact that they've had on newer members of the elected governing body and newer staff members as well. So to all the senior people, thank you so much for what you've done for us and the example. Also to speak a little bit more, to brag a little bit more on our staff. Every year on an ongoing basis, our financial staff receives the highest award given by the state of Virginia for financial reporting. And that third-party audit we undergo every year, we pass with a clean audit with no comments. So again, just a testimony to the expertise and the character of our staff that we're so thankful for. So thanks again to all. With that, we'll move along to the next item on the agenda. Our second special presentation is for Child Development Resources. We have the Executive Director with us tonight, Mr. Paul Scott. So, Mr. Scott, welcome.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and Mr. Wheeler and your staff. I appreciate the time. I'm also joined by Judd Criffield, who's our Director of Development. He's made the effort to come out tonight and learn more about how the municipals operate, and it was an impressive presentation. So I'm here tonight. I serve as Executive Director of Child Development Resources, and we have been in business since 1965, and we were founded in Williamsburg by families whose children were not allowed to go to the public schools because they had a developmental delay or disability. So these parents decided that wasn't good enough for their kids, so they started their own school. And it was called the Williamsburg Preschool for Special Children. Over time, we served 5 kids that first year. Now we serve about 2,000 children a year. And Mr. Wheeler had the advice that it'd be helpful to come and make sure that your citizens and people viewing at home knew that this resource was available. So I'm happy to be here and share some of that. Our purpose is, you can see here, to inspire children, families, and early childhood professionals to reach their full potential, whatever their challenges. So we provide a mix of direct services to children and families, but also training to early childhood professionals that do what we do. And there's a little bit of the history I've shared there. And our volunteers were retired teachers primarily. And when they came in, they just started to create ways to work with children who had developmental delays and disabilities in a classroom setting. And that was really groundbreaking at the time. There weren't many people doing that. So when the public laws changed, it really initiated our training mission when they sought us out to learn more about how we do what we do. And we have quite an array of services now. The number listed on top is that a number that any family in any the localities we serve can call, Poquoson included. And if they have any questions about the development of their young child, they can call that number, and they'll be on the phone with somebody with an advanced degree in child development, and they can answer any questions they have If they need resources, we can connect that, and if they need a developmental screening and an assessment, we would conduct that. That's done at no charge to the family. One of the other programs we have is Early Head Start. That is income restricted. And to give you an idea of what income restriction means, a couple that's both earning minimum wage would make too much money to qualify for Early Head Start. So we're talking about families that are living in pretty abject poverty and have other factors that contribute. So these are children that might have been exposed to mental health issues on one of their caretakers, substance abuse, domestic violence, homelessness. There could be a variety of factors that would make them eligible. These Early Head Start Learning Centers, that's typically the most sought after service we provide. It's childcare, and childcare is an issue everywhere, and it's expensive to run, and it's pretty complex. The state has made great strides in trying to support communities and starting their own public-private partnerships, and we're involved at the state and local level around that as well, because there just never seems to be enough of it, particularly for early childhood. Right now, in our community, in Williamsburg and James City area, it's about $310 a week for infant and toddler care, which is just absolutely beyond the affordability for most folks. We have fatherhood programs that support dads in their roles, and one of the greatest programs we have in that program is called Rookie Dads. We want to make sure dads are ready for all the things, changing, swaddling, checking the formula temperature, but also how to support mom and how to take care of her while she's doing the tremendous work. The Infant Parent Program is the one that serves children with delays and disabilities. Currently in the city of Poquoson, we have 18 children enrolled who are receiving services in this program. And CDR isn't as well known in some communities because we don't have a building on a corner somewhere. So most of the services that are being received by the city of Poquoson residents are happening in their home. And the main reason we want to do that is to take a look at how the child's functioning in their actual home. It's very different than taking a child all the way across town, putting them in a car seat, taking them over to the doctor's office, and you wait in the waiting room, and then you do an assessment or a screening. We want to actually see what's happening at home and learn ways we can use the environment in that home to improve the child's development and target the things that they need to grow and learn. HEART is a program that sadly is really driven by need. It's really for the mental health issues that are related to early childhood. We're starting to see a significant uptick in the number of children below the age of 5 that have what are referred to as disruptive behaviors. You're probably hearing about it in your school systems. These kids are just acting out, throwing chairs, biting. There's a lot of increase in this. That program is new. It was initially funded by the Centera Foundation and now the Williamsburg Health Foundation, and it provides play therapy for the young child and mental health intervention and support for the adult caretaker. We've seen tremendous results with that. I've mentioned motherhood before. We have certified lactation consultants there. We offer infant massage and infant massage training so that all the caretakers, moms, dads, and grandparents can provide massages for the kids that really helps with colic, sleeping, digestion, and weight gain. And it really reduces the stress of both the child and the parent, and they tend to sleep better, which is anybody at home, watching at home, as a young child and wants to learn how to help them sleep. Those courses are offered and they're available for free in a variety of locations. Parents as Teachers is another important program that serves kids up until their entry to kindergarten. And the Virginia Infant and Toddler Specialist Network provides support for child care providers all over the state of Virginia. And my understanding is that we've served about 80 child care providers that serve families here in Poquoson. So that is free to the child care provider. They just pick up the phone and call and say, I want a specialist to come into my center and offer me some support. And we usually go in when there's some problem behaviors with young children. That's typically the first call that we get. So we serve, as you see, families with disabilities and developmental delays, typically up to the kindergarten age. We also do our best to get connected with moms and dads when they're expecting. We have the child care program I mentioned and the therapies for kids who are either identified as having a developmental delay, and we can do those assessments, or a pediatrician has given a diagnosis. The state of Virginia allows children who are preemies to be categorically eligible, and we just had one that we worked with that I think was just quite a few pounds at birth. And so preemies need a lot of intervention and support. So you can imagine a young couple from Poquoson, they're excited about having their first child. and she goes into labor early, and there's a whole nother world that opens up about what they need to do and what they need to prepare for as a family, and we're here for them. So we'll be providing them support in their home immediately upon discharge from the hospital. We also are a resource for physicians, anybody that has questions about development, and we actually just signed an MOU with the Medical College of Virginia. They have a pediatric department there that's going to be rotating some of their residents to CDR starting this summer. And there's two main reasons we wanted to have that happen. One is to make it more accessible and easier for families living in the area, and particularly in places like Poquoson. You don't have to drive all the way to Norfolk or Richmond, and you can just come to us for that. We also really hope to impress upon the physicians how important it is that the recommendations they give to a family actually make sense to that family. So we want them to go home on home visits and see what, some of these are grad students, they just got out of med school, they may not have families of their own, and it's really important for them to know what life really actually looks like to a lot of these families. So here a little bit to talk about the next big step for us. We moved into our current facility in 1994, and the city of Poquoson was generous and supported us with a $25,000 gift to that project out at Point O'Woods Road in Norge. It's in the western part of James City County, which is not, it's a wonderful facility, it's just not as centrally located as we would like. And we've outgrown it by about 5 times. So right now we are in 5 different locations. All our programs have just grown and we needed space. It's not ideal. This is the historic Triangle Community Services Building, I believe it was called. And the United Way used to operate from here. You may recall the Williamsburg United Way. It had Head Start was there and several other buildings. It became available to us right at the same time when we were being asked to vacate some space that we occupied at Lafayette High School. We had a child care center there. It had 4 classrooms. The Williamsburg James City County schools are growing rapidly and they needed this space. So they gave us a couple years heads up, which we appreciated. Right about the same time this building became available. So our goal is to renovate this and to establish a family resource center for the entire community. These are just some renderings on the right. That's an actual picture of one of our kids on one of our playgrounds. But the 2 renderings on the right show if you've ever been in that building, I don't know how many of you've seen it, but it was very dark and very dismal in there. It was hard to get light in there, and it didn't feel very family friendly. So one of the things we asked was for the benefit of the children to have light brought into the building. So there's some solar tubes and some other things. Pretty massive renovation. It's a big building. It's 31,000 square feet. We're going to put an addition on the front to offer a large community meeting space. It's about this size. I currently serve on the CPMT as the private provider with some of the representatives from the city. And one of the things we're always looking for is large places to meet. And these are just some quotes. You may recognize Kathy Hornsby. She served as our board chair when we built our original building and is now the honorary chair of our capital campaign committee. And the Family Resource Center is going to allow us to bring all of our services together, including that support with the physicians locally, to really be a central hub for services for children at risk, young children and their families in our community. It also comes with some financial support from the Family Resource Center Network, which is currently operated in Richmond, and they provide funding to their affiliate partners. So we really hope that's going to help us expand our mental health services for young children. I switched these 2 slides, and I apologize for that. The short-term savings are actually described on the right, and the long-term savings are described on the left, so mea culpa for that. But the short-term savings of early intervention with young kids, those are the 18 that we're serving who have developmental delays. When they catch up to their typically developing peers, and that's about half of the kids that we serve. So here in Poquoson, you've got 18 kids with disabilities. We get them caught up. You don't have to have those children enrolled in pre-K, special ed. Typically, there's no tutoring and accessory services that the family's going to need. And we also have found that it stabilizes families, particularly those that have domestic violence or some substance abuse issues, and it prevents emergency removals from the Department of Social Services. I did check this morning, and the last 2 referrals we did get from the city of Poquoson were related to Child Protective Services. So you can imagine the referrals we get are based on situations that are fairly tragic and really critical that we get in and stabilize that family as quickly as we can. This is some research that has been going on for many years into where communities can invest to have the biggest impact. And it's been shown fairly consistently that an investment in early childhood tends to yield about $8 in return with all of these savings. So one of the things that I've noticed with my son in school is the kids that aren't going to succeed in school tend to not succeed very well in their vocation. They're not as employable. The kids that do really well in school tend to be employable, and they can have an income, and they can support their community, and their taxes do that. And if people fail in school, they often fail in their occupation. And we're trying really hard to make sure that when children enter school that they're completely prepared. So we had submitted earlier a request to the city of Poquoson for this new project for 312 Waller Mill for $100,000. We've asked City of Williamsburg for $250,000, and for York and James City both for $500,000 support. And with that, I am happy to take questions. I went through an awful lot of information really quickly, but my main message was to make sure that your citizens and the folks in your community knew that there was a resource here that can come to their home and support their child's development, in particularly if they're expecting, having issues with breastfeeding, if they have any concerns at all about their child's development, but in particular if they see anything that concerns them about their behavior or development, to please call us, because there is some advice always out there that they'll just grow out of it. Just give it time and they'll grow out of it. We would rather spend that 6 months trying to support that family and coach the family in how to train the child and use the activities in the home on a daily basis to support their development and not wait. So it's a critical period in a child's life, and we want to be there for them. So happy to take any questions. Judd's here as well if you have any for me.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know, is the CDR, are you involved at all in the school's IPOP program, Poquoson Schools?
So yes, in a variety of ways. So when we have children enrolled who have a delay or disability, it's part of the Individual with Disabilities Education Act Part C. Not the Medicaid Part C, but that Part C. The public preschool programs are Part B. And we have a pretty strong relationship with the city of Poquoson in terms of communicating in advance with them children that we believe are going to need ongoing services. So if they catch up, they don't make the referral. If there's still some delays that would qualify them, and for us it has to be 25% delayed in one of the core areas. For the public school, it has to be 30% delayed. So for us, if we would see that coming, and we would be able to communicate in advance with the public school staff, the special ed staff, and they have a couple of different options. Obviously, we consult in depth with them about what the child's needs are. We also have a developmental playgroup and an observation room where the city staff can come and observe that child in an environment that's going to be replicated in the public schools, so that they can be thinking about which teacher's style might fit best in what classroom, and how they can make sure that over is successful. So I did check the last time we did one. We do a child find with IPOT, and over the years the numbers have gone up and down. The last one we did was September of 2024, and we screened 7 kids, and 4 of those were enrolled in our program. So these were the families that set up at a community event, I believe, and actually families walked up and they saw the materials and just said, how do I find out more? And some of the kids, they could tell right away needed intervention, and just based on what the family was saying. And then others, we had to schedule an assessment and a screening, and they came down and did that. That's a good question, yeah. Any other questions about our services and where we are and what we do?
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Congratulations on your good report, that was excellent. Thank you.
We're very thankful for that, thankful that we have people such as yourselves that contribute to the greater good of the overall community in such an extensive manner. Y'all services are vast. The burden on us now is to help communicate and make people aware of what y'all do and the services available. And I spoke with the manager. I think we can put your contact information on our city
Oh, please,
website
absolutely, yeah.
to help
And I
help
believe
get
you
the
all have
word out.
annual reports they're the ones that just were published. That was underwritten by a corporate donor, and really appreciate that. We had a parent speaker that was going to join me and share her experiences with CDR. She had twins, and she wasn't able to make it tonight. She had the flu. So hopefully someone in the audience remembers CDR supporting their children or someone in their family, and they can reach out and share their experiences with y'all. So thank you for your time. Really
Good. Thank you
appreciate
again, Mr. Scott, Judd. Thank you also for being here. Item D on the agenda is the audience for visitors. Anybody with us tonight that would like to speak with us? Seeing none. No, that's a later topic. That's a later.
I saw him raise his hand.
Talcott, did you want to speak under audience for visitors, or did you want to speak under the pre-budget public hearing? Okay.
Yeah, not quite there yet, but almost. So seeing none, we will close the floor for the audience for visitors. Item E on the agenda is the public hearing, pre-budget public hearing.
Okay, Mr. Talcott, you're first.
We have one speaker tonight, Mr. Noel Talcott. Welcome back, Mr. Talcott.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm a bad penny, I came back. I do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I've actually sent you some information, but I thought it'd be nice to come and talk to you for the rationale for sending you that information. And it's just information I recently came across, and I thought it would be useful to share with you and hopefully the folks at home too. I'd like to talk to you about the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program. And I just personally found out about this a couple weeks ago. I'm a York Poquoson Master Gardener. At our meeting, we had a speaker that was from the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District, went through this fantastic program, told us about all the great things that they could do for you and whatever, and then she closed with, well, if you live in Poquoson, unfortunately, you're not eligible to participate in this program. And I said, whoa, what's going on? So I decided I'd do a little investigation myself to figure out the rationale for that. And first, let me just remind you what the VCAP program is. It's an urban cost share program that provides financial incentives and technical and educational assistance to property owners who are installing eligible best management practices, BMPs, in one of Virginia's participating soil and water conservation districts. So these practices actually can be installed on residential, commercial, and recreational property where the problems that folks have, like we do, erosion, poor drainage, or poor vegetation cover. Most of the practices that program will support are eligible for up to an 80% cost share. And some practices actually get an upfront incentive of payment up front. But in order to participate, your locality, and us, Poquoson, we have to be part of a soil and water conservation district. There are 47 soil and water conservation districts in the state of Virginia, and those have the responsibility for doing this work and working with the VCAP program if those programs are approved. Okay? So the soil and water conservation districts actually are the ones that manage and allocate the resources that VCAP provides and the funding, and then they're the central point for the coordination of those projects. So they're the ones that see that those projects get done and taken care of in an appropriate way. And their staff are the ones that provide the technical assistance, including any of the soil assessments, site assessments, project planning, progress evaluations, and those are integral to what VCAP requires. All right, so the Virginia Soil and Water Conservation Districts were actually established back in the 1930s, and that was after the Dust Bowl. Okay, so the state sent up 47 of these districts that cover the entire state. So the district boundaries were historically tied to counties, okay, and their respective political subdivisions. So if you're not part of one of those districts now, you don't have access to these resources. Once a locality became an independent city, they no longer fell into one of these districts. And so all the cities fell outside these districts. Okay, and so Poquoson obviously is in that same boat. So back whenever city became Poquoson set up as a city, many years ago, we have not been able to participate in these programs. So if you're not in one of the soil districts, how do you participate? There's two ways. One, you go to the state and you ask them a bunch of questions and they put a bill in, blah, 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 and maybe it passes. Okay, Richmond did that. They don't recommend you do that. They recommend that the easiest way to do it is you enter into a memorandum of understanding with one of the soil districts, okay? And currently that's how Hampton receives those services. They actually have an MOU with the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District, which includes Yorktown, Kansas City, Calhoun, whatever, okay? So you really need to establish that MOU. And with Hampton, they've done it basically for shoreline, living shoreline type things. But you have the option in the MOU to decide what things would benefit this locality the most, and you lay those out in the memorandum agreement. I looked, and it looks like everyone that participates in the district pays a fee into the system in order, if they want to be eligible for those services. And those fees are usually based on what kind of services you get. I believe right now they want to have a minimum fee, and then you base that up and down as to what you want to do. Hampton currently pays $10,000. That allows them a certain number of these programs, and they can pay up to $5,000 more with the current MOU that they currently have. So I recommend that Poquoson needs to think about creating a memorandum of understanding with the Colonial Soil and Water District, and then that would make all our residents, even the commercial properties, eligible to be able to participate in these programs. And like I say, you can have up to an 80% cost share. There's caps on how much that is, but in some cases as much as $30,000, okay? This would actually complement a program that the York Poquoson Master Gardeners have and have had for a number of years. It's called a Healthy Virginia Lawns program. And under that program, we actually, a team of Master Gardeners, will go out to a citizen in York County or Poquoson, take a soil sample at their site, talking about their lawns and stuff, do an analysis, provide a nutrient management program back to them for best practices on how they maintain their property. While we're there, we have some advanced master gardeners who have had specific water steward training. And what we do is we try to talk to the homeowner about the stormwater or the water that comes straight down on their property, what happens to it, to encourage them, try to keep that water on your property. It's free water, okay? Use it to your advantage. Don't let it, don't put your drain pipe so it goes out into the street or it runs into the local creek. So, and we only charge $20. And that's really to cover the cost of sending their soil sample off to Virginia Tech, get the results back, okay? So it's a great program. I believe to date, we've serviced over 800 as individual residences. We've actually gone out some HOAs. And so this program is also available for HOAs or any larger residential group that may need to have some type of soil erosion control program. What I did, and it's 2 weeks, only 2 weeks. Okay, so I found out about this. I said, we really need to do it, and I think it'd be good to get in front of you to see if there's funding available that could be put in even this year's budget or hopefully next year's budget. Okay, so I put together a quick proposal to you that I sent to every one of you that I thought was a good, maybe, idea of how you could put a plan together, okay? I'm open to any questions you might have on that. You don't have, not right now or whenever, but if you have questions, let me know. I'm still trying to find out more. I will continue to try and find out more because personally, I don't think I have the problem on my property, but I know there's problems in town here. And if someone can help me solve or help an individual solve that problem and help them pay for it and do it right, then I think it's something that we should try to make available to our citizens. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Talcott. Your presentation was thorough and insightful. We appreciate the effort that it took to put all that together for us. Thank you for being here, presenting it to us, and thank you for sending it to us previously so we would have it in it.
I appreciate the talk that was just presented by CDR. I wish that had been available to me many years ago, and I know it's very important. I need the SDR, the Senior Development Resources Program, so we need to create one of those too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talcott. Any other speakers tonight for this topic? All right, seeing none, we will close the pre-budget public hearing and move on to item F on the agenda, approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the work session of January 13th, 2025?
So moved.
Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Thank you. Christie, call for a vote, please.
Vice Mayor Bunting,
Aye.
Councilman Fye,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilman Freeman,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Councilwoman Emmett,
Aye.
Mayor Hux.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Christie. Next item, approval of the minutes of the regular session of January 13th, 2025. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments on that? Christie, call for a vote, please.
Councilman Fye,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bunting,
Aye.
Councilwoman Emmett,
Aye.
Councilman Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Mayor Hux. Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7.
Thank you, Christie. Item G, new business. Item number 1, a resolution for zoning amendment to the City of Poquoson Code of Ordinance, Appendix A, zoning Article 8.4, Plan Unit Development dash Mixed-Use Overlay District. And you have comments on that for us?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of council, the purpose of this item as requested by the Vice Mayor and under your sponsorship is to refer to the Planning Commission the elimination of the Planned Unit Development Mixed-Use Overlay District from the zoning ordinance and all references thereto. Mr. Horton is here if council members have specific questions.
Any questions for Wally? Wally, thank you very much for being here. I think we're all set. That being said, do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I wish to make a motion for initiation of a zoning amendment eliminating the following from the City of Poquoson zoning ordinance. Article 8-4, Plan Unit Development, Mixed-Use Overlay District, and all references thereto, and all references to mixed-use development as it relates to the Plan Unit Development Mixed Overlay District.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments on that? Okay, very well. Christie, call for a vote, please.
Councilwoman Emmett,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Councilman Fye,
Aye.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bunting,
Aye.
Councilman Freeman.
Aye.
Mayor Hux.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Christie. Item 2, a resolution making an appointment to the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facility Authority Board. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I propose a resolution appointing Vice Mayor Deborah Bunting as alternate to the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facility Authority Board. Her term expires 31 January 2027.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Sir?
I just noticed when I was reading it earlier today that Virginia Beach, Portsmouth, Norfolk, and Suffolk are not part of this. I was wondering, anybody knows if there's any movement by them to be part of it or not?
Actually, Virginia Beach and Portsmouth are now members.
Oh, okay.
It brings the total to 12.
Okay.
And I know that the EV RIFA, the City of Poquoson is one of the charter members. And Vice Mayor Freeman and I have represented the council on the RIFA since the very beginning. And I mean, this motion is to involve Vice Mayor Bunting in hopes that maybe next year I can rotate off that. That'll give her an opportunity to represent the city on a regional board. And as we've discussed before, my intention is for all council members to have the opportunity to grow and develop and expand their horizons and also to represent the city on regional boards and commissions. Former Mayor Gene Hunt gave me an opportunity when I first got on council and meant a great deal to me. I really appreciated it. And I've been able to leverage the lessons learned for the greater good. So I want to have the same opportunities that I. So that being said, we have a motion and a second. So we're ready to call for a vote, please.
Councilman Freeman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Emmett.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bunting.
Aye.
Mayor Hux.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Christie. Item 3 under new business is a resolution making an appointment as council liaison to the Poquoson Museum. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I propose a resolution appointing Vice Mayor Deborah Bunting as council liaison to the Poquoson Museum.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that? I do have a little bit to share on that. The reason for this appointment, with Vice Mayor Bunting's background in the community, her deep roots and her love for history and her existing relationships with members of the museum board, she seems like a great fit. And as we've discussed so many times, first and foremost, and I'm quoting the manager on this, we're in the relationship business, and appointments such as this will help to further build and expand our relationship with the folks at the museum. It's for the greater good of the museum, which is a great asset to the community. That's what we're here to do. So thank you very much. That being said, Christie, call for a vote, please.
Councilwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Freeman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Emmett.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bunting.
Aye.
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Mayor Hux.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Christie. Next item, item H, comments of the city manager. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. 3 items this evening. I intended to do 2, but you made me think of another one as you were speaking. You may have noticed, hopefully you did, that on Friday of last week, we were the only community that had its school systems open for in-person learning. And how that happened was the superintendent called me after hours and said, we've driven all the public streets in Poquoson. There's one that's a problem. Can you get to it in the morning so we can open? I made a quick call to Tanya, who followed up with Bodina, and by 8 o'clock the next morning, Lodge Road was done and schools were opened. And I point that out to say thank you to all the people that helped that happen, but I'm just sort of glad we're in that community where somebody has a need. We work in partnership to get it done, and by 8 o'clock the next morning. I was driving to Charlottesville. I got to Charlottesville at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they'd already been done for an hour. And I thought that was just awesome, and I wanted to mention it. I also wanted to point out to you, you may have seen it in your correspondence from us last week, but you'll see more of it at the previous meeting. We had discussions about both sidewalks and speed enforcement. With regard to the speed enforcement, one of the things we're doing moving forward is getting what we call driveway enforcement, where citizens offer us the use of their driveway, so we can specifically put an unmarked unit in it for speed monitoring and speed enforcement. That project, that has begun. You may have seen that in the weekly report last week, and you'll see it going forward each week, a listing of where we were, what our officers observed, and if there were citations that were written as part of that, what those were as well. So we started, and we're going to pick up speed from there. And lastly, with regard to the other item from your previous meeting, the sidewalks, as we left it, engineering was going to be taking the lead to work towards estimates, both in terms of money and time, for the survey of the properties for the section of Little Florida that you discussed, and separately for the 2 sides of Poquoson Avenue. Still working on the latter, but the former, the section that you talked about with regard to Little Florida, we found that we could take advantage of a survey that was done about 15 years ago, so we don't have to start from scratch, and we can just update it. That will allow us to move forward
approximate cost to update that for that section of $3,500. It'll take approximately 2 months to get it done, and without objection, I'll pull the trigger on that in the morning.
Thank you, Randy. Do we have a consensus to provide direction to the manager and staff to pursue that effort?
Okay.
Randy, I
We
think
will
we
pull the
got
trigger on that in the morning, so we should be done with that segment and be back to you probably your first meeting in April. It'll take 2 months, so we'll have it to you in April.
Thank you, Randy.
Yes, sir. That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Council directives, try to change the order up so we're not quite as predictable. Councilman Fye?
The only thing I have is I'd like to thank the folks from Public Works for getting those roads clean that you were talking about. I was going to say that before you mentioned it, but I was just amazed at how mine was all covered with snow, but that's fine. I didn't want to go anywhere that day, but it was exciting to be able to come out of Hunt Woods and get onto the main drag and everything was clean. That was good. Thanks, guys and gals.
Thank you, Keith. Councilwoman Hubbard?
Well, I want to echo really what you had said earlier, and it's just kind of resounded throughout. I'm amazed. I've only been here, this is my second meeting, and the education that I'm getting along the lines of the partnerships and the talent that we have on our staff and the way the school works with us. It's amazing how this locality can move forward on the directives that we have. And it's through the leadership, I think, that this council and our city manager have the talent, the longevity, and I'm grateful to be part of it. I really am.
Thank you. We're certainly grateful that you are a part of it. You're certainly an asset, so thank you for being here. Do you have any other comments? Very well. Councilman Freeman?
I really have nothing tonight. I will thank council for recognizing me as a senior.
That would be senior statesman.
Senior, okay.
Yeah, it takes a lot of years to reach that status. Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Councilwoman Emmett?
Oh, very well-run city. When Davenport and Company presented that, I can't hear that enough. That is great. That's great praise. Very well-run city and the single best management team in the state. So that's all great, wonderful to hear, and I completely agree with it. The management team, senior staff, the city manager's office, thank you so much for everything that you do. As a parent, I also appreciate the clear roads and the return to schools. I was monitoring all the surrounding municipalities and very happy that they were back in school on Friday. Thank you to Mr. Talcott for coming by and giving that, giving those, that synopsis of that program. And it's just, back to the Davenport and Company, it's just really good to see all these capital improvement projects methodically getting checked off, going down the list. So that's good progress to see. That's all.
Thank you, Angie. Have our other senior statesman, Councilman Southall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been called lots of things, and senior statement's the first one.
That's a high compliment.
Much better than some. However, I'd like to thank all the citizens who came out here tonight to pay attention to the city government and those at home who are watching and paying attention. Again, as I've done on many occasions, I encourage the citizens to participate in the city government, apply to work on the various boards and commissions. We always have a vacancy somewhere. And again, I want to second all the comments that have been made so far, especially the ones about clearing the road, Randy, and what Councilwoman Hubbard said. You know, it's nice to be in a city where the government is small, the city is efficient, and we don't have to go through weeks of debate as to whether or not we can do something. The best way to get something done is to start it, and that's something we can do here fairly quickly. So Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Councilman Southall. Vice Mayor Bunting?
Thank you. Again, I would just like to echo thanks to Davenport and those folks coming out tonight and giving us that wonderful report. It just puts us in a position to do the things that we want to do and to be able to carry on what we have grown to be and our financing and the planning. It's a great foundation, and very happy to be a part of that. Thank you to city manager and his staff, the finance staff. School system and the city work together hand in hand. It's evident time and time again as we hear from getting the roads cleared, as to providing the best education, as providing CDR for those children in our community that also benefit from the school system. We're a great team, very thankful to be a part of that. Also, thank you, Mr. Talcott, for coming. That was great information that you provided. We appreciate that, coming and giving us that information. And also, I would like to shout out to the Women's Club. Councilwoman Emmett and I had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to go and speak to them and attend one of their meetings. It was very good to see their meeting in progress, seeing the good things that they do for our community. They feel very welcomed, and just wanted to shout out to those ladies. Thank you very much for having us. And I would also, again, like to thank the members of council for the appointments that they made tonight, making an appointment for me to be an alternate for the Eastern Virginia Regional Industrial Facility Authority, and also the appointment to be council liaison to the Poquoson Museum. I look forward to learning more about each of those folks as time goes on. So I appreciate that very much. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that. Also recognize and thank our wonderful city assessor, Ms. Stephanie Love. She's with us tonight. And Stephanie, just to offer a word of encouragement. Being a reassessment year, I know you and your staff, you and Christina Staples are hard at it, and do appreciate what you do for us. I know y'all are bearing a heavy load right now, but thank you for what you do and your contributions to the city. Just like to speak a little bit more about what the manager talked about with getting that one extra road cleared so we could have person learning. Again, it speaks to the relationships and how that transpired. It's a matter of staff members on the school side and on the city side picking up the phone and making a call. And most of us are on a first name basis. We recognize each other's voices, but that's how easily and efficient it is to get something like that done and have a big impact. And as Randy said, he was representing the city at UVA that day, but just to further speak to the bench strength, the redundancy we have, Randy can be away attending to another need, and we have staff right here, and we don't miss a beat. So very, very thankful for that. Just can't say enough about that. Also like to thank Jen and Allison for handling the IT duties tonight. They do that on a rotating basis, but we have a large group of people that are sight unseen, but we couldn't have these meetings without them. So thank you, Allison. Thank you, Jen. And I'll continue to do a better job of recognizing the other folks that help us on the IT side with presenting these meetings to the public. So with that, we'll close the council directives. Next item on the agenda is item J, is a closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia from 1950 as amended, to consult with the city attorney. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Christie, call for vote, please.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilman Freeman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Hubbard?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bunting?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilwoman Emmett.
Aye.
Mayor Hux.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Christie. We are now in closed session. Ready? Thank you.
Way to go.
At the close of the closed session, do we have a motion for reconvenement?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Hearing none, Christie, call for a vote, please.
Vice Mayor Bunting? Aye. Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilman Freeman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Hubbard?
Aye.
Councilwoman Emmett?
Aye.
Mayor Hux?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Christie. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Christie, call for a vote, please.
Vice Mayor Bunting? Aye. Councilwoman Emmett?
Aye.
Councilman Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilwoman Hubbard?
Aye.
Mayor Hux?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Christie. We are adjourned, and if I could just respectfully request everybody to be thoughtful of staff. We've run unusually long tonight, so if we could clear out of here in a hurry and let staff make their way home to prepare for